She gave a homeless veteran a sandwich and got fired for it. But the next morning, 4 Marines in uniform marched into that cafe, and they weren't there for coffee. What started as an act of kindness exploded into a national movement, a young woman shamed for doing good, a veteran discarded, and a manager drunk on power about to get the surprise of his life. This isn't just about justice. It's about what happens when the world finally stands up for one of its own. The bell above the cafe door jingled with the same worn-out jingle it always had, faint, like it didn't really want to interrupt anyone's day. Ellie Turner barely noticed it anymore. She was too busy wiping down counter number 4, where the morning regulars had just left, their scent of cologne and sarcasm still lingering. Then she saw him. Slumped shoulders, weathered coat 2 winters too old, a duffel bag hugged tight to his chest. He looked like the kind of man who talked to no one but the ghosts of wars gone by. Ellie didn't need to ask. She could tell by the way he shuffled his boots like they still remembered parade drills. A veteran, probably homeless, definitely hungry. He sat in the corner, silent. Didn't ask for a menu. Just stared at his folded hands. Ellie approached, with a smile, not the perky kind they train you to wear in the cafe, but a real one, soft, honest. "Can I get you something to eat, sir?" The man blinked, startled. I don't have money, ma'am. Just needed a place to sit for a minute." She nodded. "Well, you're in luck. This seat comes with a sandwich. On the house. No arguments." The vet looked like she had just handed him a gold bar wrapped in wheat bread. His lip trembled, and he nodded once. Ellie made it herself. Turkey, tomato, just enough mustard. The good bread. She even added a hot coffee. She handed it to him with a quiet, "Thank you for your service," and was about to walk away when she heard a voice that cracked the warmth of the room like a snapped branch. "What do you think you're doing, Ellie?" Her manager. Bryce Whitcomb, the kind of man who wore his hair too slick and his authority too tight. Ellie froze. I said, "What is that?" He pointed to the vet, who now looked like he wanted to disappear into the tile. She kept her voice steady. "Just feeding him. He's a veteran." "On whose dime?" Bryce barked, stepping forward. "Ours? You giving away food now?" "It's a sandwich. It's cold outside. I don't care if he's Eisenhower reincarnated. We're not a charity." The entire cafe was watching now. Ellie's cheeks flushed with heat, but she didn't budge. Bryce sneered. "You want to run this cafe with your bleeding heart, Ellie? Fine. Do it from the outside. You're fired." Gasps rippled from table to table. The vet's coffee cup shook in his hands. Ellie stood there, stunned. "You're serious?" "As a profit margin. Get your stuff. Now." Tears burned in the corners of her eyes. Not from shame, but rage. The vet tried to stand, to apologize, but Ellie put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't. You didn't do anything." "Wrong!" She walked out into the cold, the cafe door slamming behind her. No one followed. No one spoke. But the man she fed? He watched her through the window. Then, slowly, he reached into his duffel bag. His hands trembled as he pulled out a cell phone. It was ancient, but it still worked. He scrolled through the contacts. Stopped on one. Pressed call. He waited. Low, gravelly voice answered on the 3rd ring. "Yeah?" The old man's voice shook. "It's me. I need a favor. 4 of you, that cafe, tomorrow." The line went silent. Then came the answer. "We're on our way." Ellie walked home through the biting wind, her breath visible in the air like tiny clouds of frustration. She had just been fired. Fired for feeding a man who had fought for his country, for offering kindness in a world that didn't seem to have much left to give. She tried to block out the voice of Bryce echoing in her mind. On whose dime? She could still see his smug face, hear his words cutting her down like they meant nothing. But nothing compared to the silence that greeted her as she unlocked the door to her tiny apartment. The place felt colder than it had in years. Empty. She'd never expected to feel so alone after doing something so simple. Helping someone who needed it. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter and she glanced at the screen. The message was from her mom. "You okay, hon? I saw what happened on the news. This will blow over. Ellie didn't respond. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know what to say. Her world felt upside down. The woman, who had always been the one to fix things, to make people smile with a cup of coffee and a kind word, was now standing in the middle of a storm she never saw coming. Minutes passed, then a knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she approached the peephole, her heart leaping in her chest as she saw a shadow standing outside. When she opened it, 4 men stood there, their broad shoulders, sharp uniforms, and boots that gleamed even in the dim light of her hallway screamed authority. One of them stepped forward. His face was hard, like someone who had seen too much, but there was something softer in his eyes. He extended a hand. "Ellie Turner?" She nodded, unsure of what to do. "We're the Marines," the man said, his voice deep and firm. "You've done something important. Now, we're here to return the favor." Her pulse quickened. "What? Do you mean?" Another man, who looked like he could break a wall with his bare hands, pulled off his jacket and handed it to her. "We're taking you to the café. Your shift's not over yet." Confusion and something else, something dangerously close to hope, swirled in her chest. "I don't—" "The door swings open, and so do our jackets," the first man said, with a grin, his eyes hardening into resolve. "It's time to make things right." Morning broke in muted gray, casting a pale light over the town. The streets lay still, wrapped in winter's hush, unaware that a quiet reckoning was making its way down Main Street. Inside Grayson's café, Bryce Whitcomb sipped his espresso like a king surveying his kingdom. His voice rang through the kitchen as he barked at the new girl behind the counter. "Table 3's still waiting on their eggs. Let's move like we care, people." He chuckled at his own sarcasm, but then the bell above the cafe door jingled. All heads turned. One Marine walked in first. He was tall, dark-skinned, with eyes like steel and posture carved from discipline. Behind him came 3 more, broad-shouldered, purposeful, wearing green jackets with insignias that didn't need explaining. Bryce blinked, confused. Can I help you, gentlemen?" The first Marine didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked slowly around the room, taking in every detail: the waitstaff's startled expressions, the customer's uneasy silence, the manager's twitching smile. "We're here for Ellie Turner," he finally said. Murmurs broke across the room. A fork clattered to the floor. Bryce stammered, She doesn't work here anymore." "That's not what we asked," the second Marine said, stepping forward. His voice was low, deliberate. "We asked where she is." Bryce's face flushed. "Who the hell are you to come in here and—" "Staff Sergeant Mark Ramsey," the first Marine said calmly. "1st Battalion, 5th Marines, retired." The third man stepped forward. "Corporal Darren King, Afghanistan, 2 tours. And I'm Gunnery Sergeant Isaac Bell," the 4th Marine added. "You fired her for feeding one of our own." Silence. Ramsey reached into his coat and pulled out a laminated photo of the old man from yesterday in uniform, decades younger. "Name's Walter Bishop, Vietnam vet, Silver Star. He trained half of us when we were just boys trying to become men." Bryce's lips parted, but no sound came out. "We served with him, we owe him, and Ellie, she honored him when you dishonored this whole place." Then Ramsey turned to the room. "This cafe's going viral in 15 minutes. We've got cameras outside, veterans in every state ready to stand with her." Bryce stepped back, heart pounding. "You can't." Ramsey stared him down. "Try us." Ellie stood across the street, half hidden behind a lamppost, breath fogging in the cold. She hadn't planned to come back, hadn't even told anyone. She'd be here. Something just pulled her, like a thread tugging her heart. She had to see it with her own eyes. When the Marines walked in, her heart skipped. They were like a storm wrapped in discipline, a force no one would dare stop. She recognized one of them, Mark Ramsey. He'd been in the photo Walter showed, her on his cracked phone last night. Young then, a legend now. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see the tension. Bryce flustered and red. Customers staring like they'd just seen ghosts walk in. Ellie clenched her gloved hands. Part of her wanted to run before Bryce saw her, before this turned into something she couldn't handle. But another part held her there. The part that knew she hadn't done anything wrong. The part that remembered Walter's shaking hands gripping that sandwich like it was salvation. Across the street, the cafe doors burst open. One of the Marines stepped outside and looked directly at her. He smiled, then waved her over. Ellie froze. People were beginning to gather now, phones out, whispering, recording. A local news van pulled up out of nowhere, camera crew spilling out. Someone must have tipped them off. Ellie took a shaky breath. Then she crossed the street. She entered the cafe like it wasn't hers anymore. But the way everyone turned to look, it might as well have been. The customers weren't sneering, they were waiting. Mark Ramsey stepped aside. "Miss Turner," he said with the kind of reverence reserved for soldiers, "we're not just here for Walter. We're here for you." Bryce scoffed. "This is ridiculous. She's not—" But the customers interrupted him. One by one they stood. An older woman clapped slowly, then a younger man, then the whole cafe. A standing ovation for the girl who gave a sandwich. Ellie stood frozen, trembling. "Ellie," said one of the Marines gently, "you still remember how to take an order?" She looked at him, wide-eyed, and nodded. The cafe buzzed with energy, raw, electric, the kind you could feel through the floorboards. Ellie stepped behind the counter slowly, like someone approaching a stage they never thought they'd walk. Again. Bryce stood rigid, fuming, face blotchy and pale. "You can't just— This isn't— She's not on the payroll anymore." Ramsey turned to him with a look that could cut steel. "Then she's on ours. You've got 5 seconds to decide whether you want to be part of this story or the villain of it," Bryce sputtered. "You can't buy me off with—" "I'm not buying you off," Ramsey snapped. "I'm telling you the world is watching. The news is already out. You fired a woman for an act of kindness. The backlash starts now." Bryce's face went white. Outside, the crowd had doubled. Veterans, reporters, even a few kids from the high school holding signs that read, "Feed dignity, not greed," and "We stand with Ellie." Ramsey handed Ellie an apron, her old one, still folded, still hers. She slipped it on slowly. A tear traced down her cheek. Not from pain this time, but from something deeper. Recognition. Strength. A woman at table 5 raised her hand timidly. "Could I get a refill, sweetheart?" Ellie smiled, picked up the coffee pot and poured it, just like before. Except this time, the cafe was hers. Her shift started anew, but it wasn't just her hands that were working. One Marine helped in the back with dishes, another cleaned tables. Ramsey stood near the door, managing the line of customers stretching outside like it was Black Friday. Bryce, deflated, shrank into the office. The cafe ran better in his absence. Walter. Bishop walked in just before noon. He paused in the doorway, eyes shining. The Marines saluted him. Ellie ran into his arms. "You did good, kid," he whispered, voice cracking. "Real good." She clung to him like he was family. Maybe he was. Now. From outside, the cameras rolled. A reporter whispered into her mic, "A small act of kindness has sparked a national conversation. And maybe, just maybe, a movement." Bryce slammed the office door and paced, fuming. His cafe had become a circus. Cameras, veterans. Ellie, smiling. Behind the counter like she owned the place. He had built this business from the ground up. How dare she? How dare they turn him into a villain? Just for enforcing policy? He pulled out his phone, hands trembling, and called the franchise owner. "Yeah, we've got a situation," he hissed. "A former employee is on the premises, disrupting operations with military guys. Real ones, cameras too." The voice on the other end was curt. "Bryce, we know. We've seen the footage. It's everywhere." "What are you talking about?" There was a pause. "You're trending on every platform," the voice said. "You didn't just fire someone for feeding a vet. You humiliated a veteran in your cafe. And now, you're a PR disaster." Bryce's heart sank. The franchise owner's tone turned icy. "We're relieving you of management effective immediately. The brand can't afford your kind of leadership." Click. Bryce stared at the dead phone in disbelief. Outside, he heard the crowd cheering again. This time for Walter, who'd stood to share a few words. Bryce peeked through the blinds. Ellie was laughing, confident, glowing. He felt small. With a final glance around the office, Bryce grabbed his jacket, slipped out the back door, and vanished into anonymity. No one followed. No one noticed. By the next morning, local news vans had turned into national ones. Photos of Ellie hugging Walter had gone viral. The café, once a sleepy little joint, was now a pilgrimage site for kindness. Ellie arrived at 6 a.m. sharp, but this time, she didn't. Wear a uniform. She wore her name, her dignity, her pride. The district franchise director greeted her with a smile and an offer letter. Manager. Effective immediately. They're giving me the café? She asked, stunned. No, the director said. You've already taken it. We're just catching up. The staff applauded. Walter stood by the door, beaming like a proud father. Throughout the day, people came from miles away just to shake Ellie's hand, to thank her for doing what others wouldn't. A woman from Chicago wept as she hugged her. A boy gave her a hand-drawn card that read, "Thank you for being brave." Even the governor's office called. They were naming a state initiative after her, the Turner Act, to protect workers who choose kindness. By sunset, Ellie sat outside on the cafe patio, her hands wrapped around a cup of cocoa. Walter joined her. You changed the world, he said quietly. She smiled. I just gave someone a sandwich. No, he replied, voice firm. You reminded the world who we're supposed to be. Months later, the cafe thrived, not just as a business, but as a symbol. Veterans staffed part-time shifts, struggling. Families received free meals every Wednesday. No one was turned away hungry. Ellie never let fame change her. She still wiped tables, still poured coffee with a smile. A framed photo of Walter in uniform hung beside the register with a brass plate. He was hungry. She fed him. The world noticed. One afternoon, a nervous-looking teenager entered, clearly short on cash. Ellie handed him a sandwich and a wink. Pay me back with kindness, she said. Outside, a weathered man watched from across the street. Bryce, thinner now, bitter, forgotten. He turned away, vanishing into the crowd. Inside, Ellie laughed with a customer as the bell jingled again. The world kept moving forward, and this time it moved towards something better.